This society will always be as a drunken of the wine. Controlling all the senses for understanding great divine. I will send fire to this land.
Peace and blessings. This is your brother Gabar, and this is IAMFITPodcast. Are you fit to go God's way? Let's go. So can we talk, my brothers and sisters? Especially you brothers, because you're the teachers. I think that rhymes. We're going to go over, Thursday is going to be extra biblical writings, conversations. We're going to pick a book. We're going to digest it, talk about it, get the background on it. There is, and I want to kind of show you guys a synopsis. Basically, let me go here. I want to show you guys this particular. I could maybe go here. I could go here. That's fine. Okay, I want to show you guys something real quick. I want to share this with the audience. And Brother Logic, he's going to be joining me in a few minutes. He'll be coming in. Thank you, babe. Appreciate you. Okay, just waiting. Let's see here. Okay. Just waiting for the computer just to catch up. This. Let's see what's going on. Having trouble connecting. Okay. Are we good? We're not good. Stop sharing. Let me try this again. Okay. Let me try this again because what I may have to do, I may have to also add this computer on the hard drive as well. But I want to talk about this particular conversation today. There was a decree, the Galicia decree. That basically what it did, it outlined books that were considered Matter of fact, let me go ahead because let me switch over the camera because you guys could not see what I'm seeing. Okay, here we go. Okay. Let me show you guys. So let's see here. There was a list of books that were removed. This is not the list. Let me get you the list. Here we go. This is the list right I'm looking for. Okay. Okay. There we go. Okay. I'm using my other computer and it's taking a while to catch up. Let me just make sure, Brother Logic, it's not in the waiting room. What is this? Okay, yeah. So, list of gospels that were removed or were not part of the canonization, right? So these are the canon gospel. We're all familiar with them. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? And then you have others that were not considered as canonical, right? And we can see here the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of the Truth, the Gospel of Mark Sinian, the Gospel of Beats, can you pronounce that? The Gospel of Mary, Judas, the Gospel of the Egyptian, the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of the 12 Apostles, the Gospel of Perfection, the Gospel of the Egyptian, the Gospel of the Hebrew, the Gospel of the Nazarene, the Lamanites, the Gospel of the 12, and then you have others, right? And we're going to maybe attack all of them. And also the Gospel of Barnabas, right? Which we're going to be attacking today, right? And I think we have Brother Logic joining us. Brother Logic, can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Are you able to hear me?
Loud and clear, brother. How we doing today, brother? How's everything?
Mike. Everything's going well. I believe you're still on maybe a 5-second delay. Just giving you a heads up.
So okay, so let me try something else. Let me you know what? Let me do this because it may be because I'm coming in on the other computer. Let me this is the gospel, but I also want to go into the commentary. So what I want to do is add this to my other computer. And if there's a delay, it's because, let me see here. Okay, the Wikipedia. And let me get out of here on this end. Oh, wait, I gotta stop maybe sharing. Okay, here we go. Okay. So what I want to do is 2 seconds. What I'm doing. Let me adjust this real quick for the people. Okay, here we go. Okay. So, all right. So what I want to do, I want to go into the book of Barnabas today, and I appreciate you coming into today. And we're gonna start maybe every Thursday attacking a particular book, right? Now, what I noticed, I don't know if you have noticed that these extra biblical writings, you may have, you have the Gospel of Thomas or the Gospel of Bartholomew, the Gospel of Philip, and so forth, so on. And when I read them, I see a lot of, like confusion in regards of the writings and I won't say odd, I don't want to call it odd, but questionable writings. But when I read early writings or books, like for instance, the letter of Peter to James, the letter of Clement to James and others, they seems more authentic to me. But these other gospel, there are some questions there, but not to say that we cannot take out valuable Jews out of these writings. I think we should not just dismiss these writings as just all lies, all fake, unreliable. I think, and especially the book of Bartholomew, it was quoted early on by different people like Jerome as a gospel during his lifetime, and other early biblical scholars or so-called fathers. So and we have several versions of the book of Bartholomew. We have the Greek version, we got the Latin version, we also have the Syriac, and also have the Slavic version as well. So what I want to do, and also the people that did the homework and read the book of Bartholomew, and have a command on this book. We're gonna touch on it real quick, but what I want to do is 2 seconds. Let me just bring in the screen here. Where are you? Okay, here we go. What's the one? Let me share the screen, and the one I'm looking for is the Wikipedia, because I want to first do a Wikipedia. Today okay, here we go. Okay. So let me switch over to the other camera for everybody to see. This is, Wikipedia, the book of Bartholomew. This is, I want to, let's see here. Let me do this. Let me do this. Yeah, because I think it's too big. That's the problem. Okay. I got a text. Hold on. Okay. Do you still hear the delay, brother Logic?
Right now, it seems like when you're speaking, I'm picking you up as you're speaking, but
Okay.
I don't think that you're receiving me until like 4 or 5 seconds later.
No, you're coming in good. You're coming in good. I think what happened, it's the other. I think I figure it out. So let's see. We could unpack this. The first thing I want to do. Could you see what I'm seeing? When I put the audience there, the Wikipedia. Could you see it and read it from your end?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
this is it's talking about the Wikipedia for the Gospel of Bartholomew. The Gospel of Bartholomew is a missing text amongst the New Testament apocrypha, mentioned in several early sources. It may be identical to either the Questions of Bartholomew, the resurrection of Jesus Christ by Bartholomew, or neither. Early source references to the Gospel of Bartholomew. In the prologue to his commentary on Matthew, Jerome mentions a Gospel of Bartholomew among several other apocryphal Gospels. The author of the Decretum Gallicanum includes the Gospels in the name of Bartholomew in a list of condemned or unacceptable scriptures.
Right. So you have early writers or early historians like Jerome, and I got to do some research on Jerome. I know he's respected within the Catholicism folks, but I got to see also, I got to read his writing more and get his background, and so forth, so on. And when you go down here, guys, these are the lists right here, the list of the Gospels. It says a Gospel is a writing recorded of the teaching of Jesus, usually in the form of an account of his life and career. So when you go down here, the list that were removed or not accepted, this is the pseudographica, apocrypha, pseudographica writings, right? And then when you scroll down, you do see the Bartholomew Gospel as one of them, right? But it doesn't mean that we should just simply ignore it or dismiss it because there's a lot of good Jews in this particular writing. So what I want to do is I'm going to switch it over to the book of Bartholomew here. I want to read the title in regard. This is from this websites are pretty good. I got the link below, so you guys could read it. It's not a long read. If you're reading it regular, it's probably going to take you about 25-ish minutes, so give or take. If you're a fast reader, you could probably do it in 15. But we're not going to read the whole thing. But we're going to just go focus on the highlights. And if you guys read it, like we asked people to do before on the show, so you could have a distant command on the conversation. If you don't have time to read it, you could also get the audio. You could either just put Gospel of Bartholomew audio, and then they'll come up, and there's different versions, and you could listen to it on your way to work or what have you, so you could have an idea what the book is all about. And I always recommend for people to also do a background, right, or do a Wikipedia or a Britannica comments, look it up in these sources to get a kind of background, who discovered it, when it was discovered, where, how many copies of it exist, and so forth, so on. So, but this particular website is going to give you a backdrop. So I guess we could start on, so this was actually translated in 1924 by the Oxford Cambridge Press in 1924 by M.R. James. Okay, he was the person charged in translating this. So let's read a little bit of it before we go into the actual writings. My brothers and sisters, but especially you brothers, especially you want to be teachers, teaching your family, teaching your friends, just, every man should have some level of scholarship, especially if you're dealing with biblical narrative, right? Always don't start with the book. Start with the commentary. Start with the introduction of the book. Who wrote it? What was their motivation? What was their purpose? Because all that is going to matter. Who was the translator, right? What was his belief? What was her belief? It was a female. You got to get the background on not only the individual, but the political climate that he was in at that time, right? So all that's important. So we could pick it up. We could maybe start with Jerome, and we could go into the highlights.
All right. Jerome, in the prologue to his commentary on Matthew, mentions a number of apocryphal gospels, those according to the Egyptians, Thomas, Matthias, Bartholomew, the 12, Basilides, and Apelles. Probably he depends upon Origen, for he himself disliked and avoided apocryphal books, with few exceptions. The gospel according to the Hebrews, for instance, he hardly reckoned as apocryphal. Of this gospel of Bartholomew, we have no sort of description. We find it condemned in the Galatian decree, which may mean either that the compiler of the decree knew a book of that name, or that he took it on trust from Jerome. In the Pseudo-Dionysian writings, two sentences are quoted from the divine Bartholomew, and a third has just been brought to light from the kindred book of Herodias. But one cannot be sure that these writers are quoting real books. We have, however, a writing attributed to Bartholomew, which attained some popularity. The manuscripts do not call it a gospel, but the Questions of Bartholomew. It contains ancient elements, and I think that M.M. Wilmart and Tesserant have made out their claim that it at least represents the old gospel. I therefore give a translation of it here.
Right. So, and like I said, this actually link is listed below, and you guys could get it on your own. So these are the things it kind of covers, right? and we could read on top the first one, the descent into hell, and so forth, so on.
I take the Greek and Slavic where they exist as the basis of my version and add some passages from the Latin. The main topics common to two or more of the text are: first, the descent into hell, the number of souls saved and lost; two, the Virgin's account of the Annunciation; three, the apostles see the bottomless pit; four, the devil is summoned and gives an account of his doings; five, questions about the deadly sins, commission of the apostles to preach, and the departure of Hamashiach. This
Right,
reads like a late edition.
right. So they were a Greek, they were a Latin, and a Slavic version, and what they did, they kind of combined all three. So there was manuscripts. So when the Slavic was missing some part, they looked at the Greek or the Latin to see if that part is in that version, and they kind of created one document in what you see today. And when the Greek is different from the Slavic, they repeat the same verse, right? So um, so we could start at, let's just see, after the resurrection of his death, the Lord Jesus said, about them came unto Jesus and a question. And they were asking him questions. And when you read, it basically states, then it gives you the different version. One says, I asked you a question. The other one said, we asked you a question. And so for someone, I want to let's start at, Jesus said to him, I know what thou, we could start at verse 5. Verse 5.
All right. Verse 5. And Jesus said to him, I know what thou art about to say. Say then what thou wilt, and I will answer thee. And Bartholomew said, Lord, when thou wentest to be hanged upon the cross, I followed thee afar off, and saw thee hung upon the cross, and the angels coming down from heaven and worshiping thee. And when there came darkness, I beheld, and I saw thee that thou wast vanished away from the cross, and I heard only a voice in the parts underneath the under the earth, and great wailing and gnashing of teeth on a sudden. Tell me, Lord, whither wentest thou from the cross?
So
Verse 8.
basically, but
And Jesus
Bartholomew,
answered and said,
yeah, so I'm sorry, is it a delay? I'm sorry, you can hear me?
Yes, sir. It's
Oh,
just it's a delay.
it's a delay. Okay, okay,
Sorry about
okay.
that.
We have to work that out where that delay is coming from. But what I wanted to, so basically to kind of set the stage, Bartholomew had a question for Christ. This time period is this is after the resurrection of Christ. So he's back, and they're asking him questions. This is very similar when you read the whole thing. Towards the end, he does descend, and the two men, the same story in Acts chapter 1, is basically the same story, but this is expounding upon that. And this question that Bartholomew asked Christ is, listen, I follow you when you was being hanged, and I saw a vision, or I saw something that you disappeared from the cross, and then you went into Hades or hell, and you heard voices and things of that nature. So then Christ is going to explain what actually is going to happen. So let's start at verse 8.
Yes, sir. Starting at verse 8. And Jesus answered and said, Blessed art thou, Bartholomew, my beloved, because thou sawest this mystery. And now will I tell thee all things whatsoever thou askest me. For when I vanished away from the cross, then went I down into Hades, that I might bring up Adam and all them that were with him, according to the supplication of Michael the archangel. Then said Bartholomew, Lord, what was the voice which I heard was heard? Jesus saith unto him, Hades said unto Beliar, As I perceive, a god cometh hither. And the angels cried unto the powers, saying, Remove your gates, ye princes, remove the everlasting doors. For behold, the King of glory cometh down. Hades said, Who is the King of glory that cometh down from heaven unto us? And when I had descended 500 steps, Hades was troubled, saying, I hear the breathing of the Most High, and I cannot endure it. He cometh with great fragrance, and I cannot bear it. But the devil answered and said, Submit not thyself, O Hades, but be strong. For God himself have not descended upon the earth. But when I had descended yet 500 steps, the angels and the powers cried out, Take hold, remove the doors, for behold, the King of glory cometh down. And Hades said, Oh, woe unto me, for I hear the breath of God.
Now, this is what I'm wondering.
Verse 16.
Right? This is what I'm
And
wondering.
Beliar said unto Hades,
Brother Logic, I know this is delayed, so I do apologize to the audience. I got a question for you, Logic. Do you think this happened while Christ was in the cross, or did Bartholomew saw this while he saw when Christ would go to the ground, what would happen in the ground while he's in the earth for 3 days and 3 nights? Or do you believe that, Christ left his body while he was in the cross? Because it's not clear. The way I read it, I read it several times. I don't know if he saw it in a vision, like when he did like a future. You get what I'm saying? Versus him leaving his body and his spirit going down to Hades. How you read it when you understood it?
So how I read it, it's he sees this as a vision. He's looking upon the situation during the crucifixion, but then he sees this vision of him not being there on the cross. Now we know that he was still there on the cross because his body was taken down and then it was buried.
Right.
But the vision that he saw was explaining the spirit being given up the ghost, as it's stated in the standard gospels.
Right.
Him then being able, in the spirit form, entering into that spiritual realm, going down to Hades, and setting the captives free, so to speak, which was prophesied. And also, we see this in the Gospel of Nicodemus, which is very thorough on this particular passage of Christ's descent into hell, and it reads pretty much the same way,
Right.
except with a little bit more detail.
So
So that's my take on it. I believe that that's what he saw.
right, and I remember, and I may want to bring a Catholic over to the show one day, because I believe there was an argument that I either was reading or an explanation that the 3 days and the 3 nights really started the day that he began, or that evening he began to pray. You ever heard that explanation that the that it was a symbolic gesture? Some argue that. I also heard that the day was shortened or something like that. There's always an explanation. We could probably go, because there's some extra explanation. But one thing that I remember reading or hearing a Catholic talking about, that the 3 days and 3 nights really started with his passion, when he got arrested, or we started praying, and remember he started bleeding blood or sweating blood, I think it was, and so forth, so on. Now, I don't believe that. I think it's an explanation. I think that's just a lazy explanation, or just giving something. But maybe this was tampered with a little bit to try to make it seem as if he left the body, or the body disappeared. Because I'm pretty sure if the body disappears, other people would have noticed it, right? And it would have recorded. And so I wonder if there was some tampering there to try to make it seem, well, technically he went, the Gospel of Bartholomew said he went to hell while he was in the cross, so we could count that as one day or part of the day, the 3 days and 3 nights. That's what sprang out to me. But within this particular scenario, it doesn't hurt the gospel, right, in any way. It just gives you more detail, because in the book of Peter says that he went into hell and preached to the spirits in hell. So we know that, right? I know other Israelite groups say that was not talking about literal going to hell. That was speaking to he was preaching to the spirits that were or people that were locked up by the spirits of devils. You ever heard the explanation by other Israelites in regards of that? What is that scripture? Let's go to the scripture real quick. Matter of fact, let me stop sharing real quick, and let's go to the where's that in the Bible? I think in Acts, not Acts, Peter's, that he went to the spirits. He went to the spirits.
Let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
I do love SteamYard for some reason, and I call my internet cable. They said you got the highest speed that we could provide, but it's really, let's see here. It says everything is fine, but but I've been having some internet issues. I got to figure this out, why that is. It's just my computer is extremely slow. It's like really slow. But we're gonna go to First Peter's when it says that Christ went into Hades. If I could just, for the love of God, get this thing going over here.
Chapter 3, verse 19.
First Peter's chapter 3, verse 19.
I believe it's chapter 3, verse 19.
Second or First Peter's? I think it's First Peter's. Yeah, I think it's First Peter's.
First Peter chapter 3.
Yeah, verse 19, right? So we could read it. Let's see if we could share. Let me try to share here for the. And if that's the case, I could might as well just. Yeah, it's just extremely slow. I don't know what it is. It's been slow lately, and it's been driving me crazy. But we're in verse 19 of the book of. Right, we could start at.
Let's go start at verse 18.
18, that'd be good. Yes, sir.
Verse 18. This is First Peter chapter 3, starting at verse 18. For Christ also have once suffered for sins, the just for the unjust, that he might bring us to Elohim, being put to death in the flesh, but quickened by the Spirit, by which also he went and preached unto the spirits in prison, which sometime were disobedient, when once long suffering of Elohim waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was a preparing, wherein few, that is 8 souls, were saved by water. The like figure whereunto even baptism doth also now save us, not the putting away of the filth of the flesh, but the answer of a good conscience towards Elohim by the resurrection of Yehoshua HaMashiach.
Right, so the baptism is symbolic gesture. It's not, although when you wash your body with water, you do, matter of fact, let's switch over here. I'm sorry, folks. I want people to see as well. When you do wash your body with water, it does cleanse. But the purpose for the baptism, because the word baptism is the Greek submersion, right? To submerge yourself into water. That's what you do when you want to wash up, cleanse yourself. But it's symbolic gesture. You're not doing it, but to a good conscience towards God. So, more further evidence. This is also talking about physical baptism, because he made a reference to how 8 souls were saved by water, right? 8 souls will also baptism will also save you, but it's not to put away the filth, but it's to put away or to deal with a pure conscience towards the Most High, right? So let's continue reading, and this kind of like expound upon that, right? Expounds upon Christ going to Hades and bringing back Adam, and the first book of Peter's expound that there were souls had to pay penalty. And for what I read, when I read the scriptures, and especially extra biblical writings, the pattern is that even righteous people or people that were mentioned in the Bible that went off had to pay a little penalty. And then later on was removed. Solomon, I have heard writings, David, like they were not scot-free by going into reading, by just because they repented, they still had to pay the debt. And that's what I get from when I read these extra biblical writings. That, let me just adjust this real quick for the audience, and perfect. Okay. So that's what I get when I read these extra biblical writings. There need to be a debt paid. Just because you repented, doesn't mean that God is going to forgive you, or you don't have to still pay a penalty. Right? Have you read that in other biblical writings that of Solomon removing or being removed from hell? David, I think it was, and other people that did wrong. They were good people, but they still they repented, but they still had a penalty. And this is why I believe this society, the way it's structured today, it is a upside down version of the order that is in heaven. Similar today, if you commit a crime, if it's a misdemeanor, you're going to do a year or less. If it's a felony, it's going to be more than a year. It could go up to 10, 20, life, what have you. So it looks, depending on your sin, you're going to be paid. The Most High is going to pay you according to your sins. That's what I see here in these writings. Right. So let's continue, and I wanna just touch on that.
Right, and also when we look,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry, I think the delay has increased substantially, but what I was going to say, when we look into the Torah, we also see, for example, that whenever you had an infraction or a penalty, you repent, which means you turn away from it, but you still had to pay the required penalty or the debt, whether it be that of, hey, you stole 2 sheep and now you got to repay the person, 8 sheep or something, or double or triple, whatever the penalty may be. So there is something to that. But yeah, in other writings, you do see where, because how could I put this? When you go deeper, you understand that hell, because we see that over in Revelations, death and hell are tossed into the lake of fire. Hell is a being.
Right.
A lot of people look at it as a location. And that's where, like, some of our brothers and sisters in the camps, and then some of those that may not be in camps, they get like a little bit confused on that, because some of those camp brothers do have some understanding on that. So when we go through Gospel of Bartholomew, and when we go into, like a reference earlier, Gospel of Nicodemus, you're going to see, like we just saw here in Gospel of Bartholomew, where Beliar, the devil, was speaking to hell, which is Sheol and hell, one and the same person. And saying, don't worry about, this Hamashiach who is about to come and break down the gates of hell. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you guys could read that on your own. He goes back and forth, and Christ speaks to him about different souls, or the devil got revealed, and then, they were scared, and then Christ told Bartholomew to put your foot on Satan's neck, and asked him why he did and what he did, and it was a conversation back and forth, and of course he said, the reason why I failed, because I didn't want to bow down to the image of God, which was Adam. And these are things that we have read in other areas, like the book of Adam and Eve. Even the Quran took records from that book of Adam and Eve and repeated the same sentiments that Adam and Eve had the conversation. Adam and the devil had a conversation about, hey, why you always messing with us? And then he explained to them, it's because of you, I got kicked out of heaven. So when you hear multiple witnesses, even when you see different records, that you may agree with certain things, you may disagree in other things. There's certain things I do disagree in these records, but I don't know. It could have happened. But it just one of these things that I got questions. But if you see the same pattern, there's some evidence to say, okay, there's probably some truth to it. However, though, you got to be careful because let me see the part I wanted to go into with here we go, with Mary. So there was real forgery back in the day, right? There were real forgeries, and I'm going to go into a lesson on that, a history of forgery that even went into the 19th century, like 100 years ago. Because what was happening is that about 120 years ago, okay, Dag is breaking up so bad. Okay, so I'm hearing somebody's breaking up so bad. Well, I'm going to work it out with you in regards to maybe sending you some audio. I don't know if the audience is... I know I've been having issues with my internet, so it could probably be me. But, we'll usually in the recording gets a little... It becomes a little better. Or once the final recording. But there were forgeries. Because when archaeology as a discipline became popular, people said there's money to be made in finding these things. So we have to be very careful when we are reading these things. So let's start at chapter 2, verse 1. And we could and now the apostles were in the place with Mary, right? And then we could start at verse 2. We could pick it up at verse 2 if you don't mind. And I know there's probably a delay, so I'll wait until you. Okay.
Verse 2. And Bartholomew came and said unto Peter and Andrew and John, let us ask her that is highly favored, how she conceived the incomprehensible, or how she bare him that cannot be carried, or how she brought forth so much greatness. But they doubted to ask her. Bartholomew therefore said unto Peter, thou that art the chief and my teacher, draw near and ask her. But Peter said to John, thou art a virgin and undefiled and beloved, and thou must ask her. And as they all doubted and disputed, Bartholomew came near unto her with a cheerful countenance, and said to her, thou that art highly favored, the tabernacle of the Most High, unblemished, we, even all the apostles, ask thee, or all the apostles have sent me to ask thee, to tell us how thou didst conceive the incomprehensible, or how thou didst bear him that cannot be. But Mary said unto them, ask me not, or do ye indeed ask me concerning this mystery? If I should begin to tell you, fire will ensue forth out of my mouth and consume all the world.
And this is when I read
yet
this,
the more to ask her.
But when I read this, I was like, what are we gaining for this? What was the purpose of this being recorded if this happened? I'm not 100% this thing is sure that this happened. To kind of give the long story, give a long story short in regards to what happened, those that haven't read it. So basically, they were asking Mary, hey, give us the mystery how Christ was born, or how you consumed him, or how you birthed him. And she said, I cannot. Now, it gives reference to the virgin birth in regards, it says, the virgin, clearly at that time she will be an older woman. So the term virgin cannot be applied to an older woman, so it clearly gives reference to a virgin birth. And one thing that I noticed is that it doesn't matter whether all the, I won't say all the records because I haven't read all of them, but a lot of them give reference to Mary being a virgin. I haven't found a record outside of I believe the Gospel of the 12, which was a much later, I think it was discovered around the 1200s or 1100s. I don't remember. I gotta go back to that. Is the only one that says that Joseph lay with Mary and they conceived, they had sex. Oh, I haven't read early documents about this. Now, to be fair, I'm okay with people that believe the virgin birth. I don't think that's salvation is a salvation argument. I don't think. I don't believe in the virgin birth, but I don't condemn people that do, because there is, I would say, a plethora of evidence or writings that allude to her being a virgin, not only during the time of the birth of Christ, but also even after. Matter of fact, the Catholics, they believe that Mary was a virgin before, during, and after the birth of Christ, that she was forever a virgin, that the children that are mentioned in the Bible, Joseph's children and Mary's, and is this not the carpenter's son who married his mother? We know, and his brothers and sisters, that those brothers and sisters came from a previous marriage. There's no literature that I read that confirms that. A lot of it is from an assumption, but this particular document gives it allures to that. And to make a long story short, basically she began to, she told the apostles, okay, I'm going to tell you, and said, come, let's sit down. And then Peter, you sit on my right hand, grab my right hand with your left arm, and I think Thomas or John hold my left arm, and then another apostles hold my back and my shoulder, put my shoulder back because I don't want my bones to be removed. And then she began to speak, and fire come out of the mouth. I don't see the reason for that, and I don't know if that's even remotely something that needs to happen, or what's the purpose. It didn't seem, it was unsensical to me. What was your thoughts when you read that? And we could maybe read let me try to find the area where and Mary, and then they were saying, they were going back and forth. Let's pick it up at verse. Let's see here.
Yeah, we could read through that whole account also. But my thoughts on when I read it,
yeah, what's your version on that?
Reminded me once again. Um, once again, it kind of reminded me of something like that I had read previously in another gospel, but not pertaining to Mary, but something that was stated that if I bring forth this information, or I'm commanded not to bring forth such and such information,
Yeah,
or there could be like a great consequence or something to that effect.
yeah,
And so, I mean, to me, I was like, okay, it's something that I would look even further into
yeah,
and take note of every time I come across similar passages. Um, as it pertains to the virgin birth, this seems to more so allude to that, whereas, but it doesn't specifically say it. As we have to go through the entire, as we go through the entire thing, if not this one, it would be the Gospel of Nicodemus, but I believe it's this one, which says that she goes on to say that she would conceive. Now, to conceive, she would still have to have interaction with her husband,
yeah,
right? So it could,
yeah. And I think
it's
the
it's either
gospel,
or,
also the
but like you said
gospel,
earlier, it's not that issue of salvation.
right? And I think the gospel of what's the guy that took the guy, not Joseph, he was a priest. The guy that Christ spoke to, and he said, "You must be born again." John 3. What was his name? What was his name? He was a priest, and then he asked him, he went to Christ secretly, and he asked him, "What should I, do to have eternal life?" And then he said, "You must be born again. Can a man?" Nicodemus, the Gospel of Nicodemus. There you go. I'm getting old. I'm forgetting these names. And there was a debate. There was a trial on Christ in that gospel that they were trying to argue that he cannot be the Messiah because he was born out of fornication. And then he came up and said, "No, I was present when Joseph was promised to Mary. He was not born of fornication, and because she was espoused to Joseph, and it gives some level of credence that they did lay together. So there is certain clues here and there, and some extra biblical writings give the illusion or the assertion that there was a virgin birth. Others give the assertion there was not. But we have to do more studies on that because it's a lot. Because I noticed it to be there a lot. So we could, let's see here. So
And
yeah,
a
go
lot
ahead.
of times it's just that a virgin gave birth.
Right. But in this version, they were calling her the virgin, even later on, as an older woman, because this is clearly. And then after that, Christ came, and and there was a part when Peter and her and the apostles, verse 7, and the apostles stood behind Mary. Mind if I let me just go up a little higher. But Mary said unto them, this is verse 5, "Ask me not, for do ye indeed ask me according to this mystery? If I should begin to tell you, fire shall issue forth out of my mouth and consume all the world." But they continue yet in the more and to ask her, and she, for she could not refuse to hear the apostles, said, "Let us stand up in prayer." And this is the one I wanted to go. It says, "And the apostles stood behind Mary, and she said unto Peter, Peter, thou chief, thou great pillar, stand thou behind us. Said not our Lord," and this is interesting, it says, "not our Lord, the head of the man is Christ. Now therefore stand ye before me and pray." Now this is interesting because I guess according to this parable or this particular gospel, Mary had a level of respect towards the apostles, obviously, because she was the mother of Christ. Joseph is not mentioned hardly ever. The legend is that he was an older man. He probably passed away very early on, and that's the reason why he is mentioned. But that's, conjecture. It's just a theory because we have no evidence. But this has a lot of Roman Catholicism in the windows because the Romans said that Peter was the head apostle and he was the Pope, the first Pope. And they said that the Pope is the continuation of Peter. Now, when you read the gospel, there is no evidence that Peter was the head of the church. Matter of fact, all the evidence point that James was the head apostle of Jerusalem, or Peter and James was kind of running things together. And when you look at Peter, when he went to preach or to the Gentiles, to Cornelius, when he went back to Jerusalem, the elders contended with him. Now, if Peter had all this authority, there will be no reason for them to contend with. They would say, "Okay, Pope Peter, I guess now God revealed this to you, or teach us what God revealed to you. He had to contend with them and break it down, what happened, and so forth, so on. And after they broke it down, that's when so I guess unto the Gentile also was given the Holy Spirit. And even going back into the first council in the book of Acts, chapter 15, when it goes into the argument about whether Gentiles are required to also get circumcised, as well. And there was a debate going back and forth, and they went to Jerusalem and had a council. So all the evidence point that Peter was not the head of the church. He was equal among the elders, and he didn't have a special status. Even going to the book of Galatians, Peter and Paul, when Paul referenced Peter and James, he said these were pillars of the church, not only Peter as being the only pillar or the vicar of Christ, as the Roman Catholics want to call Peter. And this kind of has a lot of, this is where I would say this is some suspicious, because here you have, Mary, Peter, and Mary telling Peter, here, stand beside me, next to me, and they were, going back and forth, and they said, says not our Lord, the head of the man is Christ. Now therefore stand ye before me and pray. Right. So Mary was quoting Christ, that did not our Lord said the head of the man is Christ, but we cannot find that. That's a quote that Paul stated. Be a follower of me as I'm a follower of Christ. I will let you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of Christ is God, and the head of every woman is man. I'm not quoting directly exactly, but you guys get the drift. Now, Christ could have quoted that, and maybe Paul was quoting Christ, just the document did not survive. That's a possibility, okay? But it's just interesting that they're going back and forth in regards of who should pray, and Mary is telling Peter, hey, you should be praying because you're the head pillar, the great pillar, and so forth, so on. And then eventually Mary was the one they prayed, right, in the story. And then she began to speak, and then she told them, hey, here's a long prayer. You guys could read it on your own. And then after that, she began to tell the story of how the angel began to visit her, and how they used to feed her. The angel used to visit her every day. And then there was an angel that visited her without food, and he declared that out of her would come the Messiah, similar to the story that we hear in Luke, right? And then after that, Christ appeared, and then he, matter of fact, let's start at verse 22, the last verse of chapter 2, if you don't mind, brother. And then, and I know that there's a delay, so we could pick it up.
Chapter 2, verse 22.
Yep, that's it.
And as she was saying this, fire issued out of her mouth, and the world was at the point to come to an end. But Jesus appeared quickly and laid his hand upon her mouth and said unto Mary, utter not this mystery, for this day my whole creation will come to an end. And the flame from her mouth ceased, and the apostles were taken with fear, lest haply the Lord should be wroth with them. And one of the things that when I see the fire coming from her mouth, it kind of reminds me, I think, what we read over in the book of Acts, where they had the tongues of cloven fire, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So I will have to go back and pull that one up.
Yeah. And like I said, this could have happened, but I question it. And what was the motivation? What was the purpose of this? This gospel, I believe it was discovered around the 4th century, 300 plus, around the Council of Nicaea, or a little after. Jerome quoted, but Jerome was a stark Catholic, and he was a Roman. He was because when you look at the beef, started with the bishops of Rome. They began to kind of dictate what is gospel and what's not gospel. And then there was a meeting, the Council of Nicaea, that the bishop from Egypt in Alexandria, they just walked away, and they just said, because the first argument was the essence of Christ. What was Christ? Was he fully divine, fully man? Was he God and man? The Trinity and all that began to form out of these councils, and Rome began to establish their own authority, and then then you have other churches like the Eastern Orthodox Church, which is like the Russian church today, the Syriac churches, the Oriental churches, all the Middle Eastern churches. They began to kind of split from the Romans, but since the Roman was the superpower of that time, Europe is America is a continuation of Europe. So it's like the history that we receive is from the perspective of the Roman Catholics, the Protestants, and all that, and things of that nature. So we, as people of the book, the Hebrew Israelites, we have to have our own Council of Nicaea. We have to relook at these books, not only read them, but I think, and I was having this conversation with Brother Omri today. Shout out to him. He's had twins. He's crushing it. And so shout out to him. And then that we have to educate. We have to increase within the Hebrew Israelite community. We have to increase our scholarship. And I'm not talking about just doing what we're doing, collecting these books, reading them. We have to go into the Greek. We have to go into traditional schools, pay for them, learn Greek, get a master, get a PhD, get those credentials, but we could eventually bring forth our Sanhedrin, so to speak, of scholarship, of men that have done the work, and they have gone into these areas and read and see these documents and so forth, so on. And maybe a lot of these documents, when we start examining them ourselves, we could start saying, wait a minute, I would not have translated this. This was not fire coming out of Mary's mouth. This is, you get what I'm saying? It could be a totally different translation, right? Or a little word, or one particular translation could change the whole dimension of the entire scripture, right? So we have to make sure that we elevate ourselves, and every generation, I believe, we have this thing. When I was in the 90s with One West, they thought Christ was coming for the year 2000. When I was GOCC, the fleeing, we got to leave, and I do believe we do got to leave eventually. America's going to fall, but that's constantly in our mind. We're not plotting. We're not. Say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go to college, or I'm going to take you send your kids, and I send my kids to learn law. You send your kids to learn Greek. Send your kids to learn Hebrew, and we could, create our own community of scholarship, and so forth, so on. Because until now, we have to rely on their scholarship, and they could interpret it the way they see it, and everybody's biased. I'm biased. We all biased to some degree, right? So let's continue reading. I want to touch on this. So let's see. So let's see what else was interesting. Anything else that pops up that you feel that is interesting? That let's see. Let's go to verse 4. Let's see what that says. And he took them and brought them into Mount Olive, and Peter said unto Mary, "Thou art a highly favored, entreat to the Lord that would reveal unto us the things that are in heaven." And there's a lot of stuff happening in heaven. In regards of Adam and Eve transgression, and in regards, that the moon is not as bright as the sun because the sun represents the man, right? And then the moon represents the female. So there's a lot of, that's why these gospels, they are considered as in Gnostics. Gnostic means hidden meaning. Hidden, it's like you have to figure out what it means and so forth, so on. So there's a lot of, I would say, strange into that. What is your thought? Matter of fact, let's read verse 4 real quick, so people can understand what we're talking about, if you don't mind.
Verse 4. One second here. Verse 4. Peter saith again, O tabernacle that art spread abroad. Mary saith, Thou art the image of Adam. Was not he first formed, and then Eve? Look upon the sun, that according to the likeness of Adam it is bright, and upon the moon, that because of the transgression of Eve it is full of clay. For God did place Adam in the east and Eve in the west, and appointed the lights that the sun should shine on the earth unto Adam in the east in his fiery chariots, and the moon in the west should give light unto Eve with a countenance like milk. And she defiled the commandment of the Lord. Therefore was the moon stained with clay, and her light is not bright. Thou therefore, since thou art the likeness of Adam, oughtest to ask him, but in me was he contained that I might recover the strength of the female.
Right. So
Now, when they
basic.
came up to the top of the mount
I'm
and the
sorry.
master was withdrawn,
I'm sorry. So to kind of go a backdrop, when you read on your own, and the way I look at it is that Peter and Eve, Peter and Mary were going back and forth because Peter was either intimidated by asking Christ certain questions. So he was like, hey, you his mom, you ask him. You're the one that bore him. You had him in your womb. You asked him. And then Eve was like, wait a minute, you're the image of God. Doesn't God, Christ said that the head of Christ is God and the head of man is Christ. You asked him that question. So they was like going back and forth. That's how I picture it. How do you picture it?
well, so we see this an example of this in the Torah when Moses that came down off the mount. He had he shone or he shined.
Right.
When we read here in the Gospel of Bartholomew, the apostles noticed that um, he was he seemed to be giving off more power than before, and it felt different. So at that time would be a little bit nervous
Yeah.
witnessing these things. So you have to understand a lot of things are taking place at that time. He's risen from the grave or from the sepulcher, and now they see him, but they know it's him, but at the same time he has a certain aura about himself that was different than before, more magnified than before. So it kind of alludes that they were kind of there was some trepidation there where they didn't just want to go up and you know start asking him a lot of questions,
Yeah.
upon his return like that. Whereas Bartholomew, he seemed to be the one, as it is written here in the Gospel / Questions of Bartholomew, to kind of be going forward with a few of the questions or what have you.
Right. Right. Right.
I did want to say, when it comes to learning languages, I w- I would recommend that the people, brothers and sisters, consider learning the biblical Hebrew. That's a very important thing because that you know helps brothers and sisters get on the same understanding
Yeah.
versus having multiple doctrines. But a lot of people have been taught that the biblical Hebrew um, is. Some people will say, "Oh no, that's Yiddish," but it's not. It's actually,
Right.
Yiddish uses the same letters, but there is not the same language.
Right. Right.
So, I was able to learn that from the brother Yediah. So that's a recommendation because we have a lot of ancient texts that are missing from the scriptures that are, in Hebrew or what have you.
Yeah.
So, I think that would be beneficial to the community as well.
Yeah. You ever saw that movie called Arrival? Arrival? It was an alien visitation, and it was like a thing that was like looked like a cube, and then there was a lady. The military hired her to kind of figure out the language of the aliens, and then once she learned it, it gave her the ability to not be controlled by time, and she could be in the present and in the future and the past simultaneously. It was like a weird thing, and at the beginning or at the end of the movie, they said that when you learn a different language, you see the world differently because language determines your perception of the world. By words that you use every day, it gives you, so therefore, and I looked into it, it's like when you, like Hebrew, everything is either masculine or feminine, right? And in the English language, a lot of words are neutral. They're either feminine, or masculine, right? And I was reading something. I was having a conversation with somebody that told me that this is the reason why now gender is being questioned, because everything in the Hebrew or in other languages, there's a masculine version. So even the word car or vehicle, in the Hebrew, it will be a way to say it a masculine way and another way to see it in a feminine way, and so forth, so on. And I'm just using it as an example. That language does change your point of view. So I do believe that once you start learning Hebrew, and because a word in Hebrew can only be explained by a sentence, like a phrase, because you cannot find a word to describe this word in Hebrew. And once you understand that, sometimes you see the challenges in even translation, right? And when you're trying to say, okay, how can you find one word to describe this phrase in Hebrew? And sometimes you can't do it. It's impossible, right? So, so let's go. Let me see what else. So then Jesus appear again. Let's pick it up at verse 6 and 7.
Verse 6. Now, when they came up to the top of the mount, and the master was withdrawn from them a little space, Peter saith unto Mary, Thou art she that has brought to naught the transgression of Eve, changing it from shame into joy. It is lawful, therefore, for thee to ask. When Jesus appeared again, Bartholomew saith unto him, Lord, show us the adversary of men, that we may behold him, of what fashion he is, and what is his work, and whence he cometh forth, and what power he hath, that he spare not even thee, but cause thee to be hanged upon the tree. But Jesus looked upon him and said, Thou bold heart, thou askest for that which thou art not able to look upon. But Bartholomew was troubled and fell at Jesus' feet and began to speak thus: O lamp that cannot be quenched, Lord Jesus Christ, maker of the eternal light, that has given unto them that love thee the grace that beautifieth all, and hast given us the eternal light by the coming into the world, that has accomplished the work of the Father, has turned the shamefacedness of Adam into mirth, has done away the sorrow of Eve with a cheerful countenance by the birth from a virgin. Remember not evil against me, but grant me the word of mine asking, who didst come down into the world, who has confirmed the eternal word of the Father, who has called the sadness of joy, who has made the shame of Eve glad, and restored her by vouchsafing to be contained in the womb.
Right. So it is a lot of back and forth. It's Mary is an important character in the story. Although Bartholomew is actually most of the question, and I guess in this story, Peter is too scared or he's too concerned to ask Christ questions, and he's pushing Mary to to ask these questions because you his mother, you birthed him, and actually, and then so there. I think according to the story, and there's a reason why this book is also called the Questions of Bartholomew, because the narrative is that Bartholomew took the horn, the bull by the horns, and took charge and asked the question, right? And according to this scenario, and then this is talking about Satan and his appearance and how many cubits he was, and then it gives you the different version of the different languages, the Latin, the Slavic. And I want to focus on
So can we
you want to touch on
stop
that?
at that?
You want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so when we go back to verse 12,
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very long delay, so sorry about that.
That's okay. But go ahead. The floor is
So
yours.
here in verse 12, this yeah, so when I saw this years ago, um, I looked at the description and then I remember seeing this movie. There's this movie called Godzilla King of Monsters, and it has a dragon in it called King Ghidorah. Now I remember King Ghidorah from when I was a child.
Mhm.
But when you actually go back into the old Godzilla movies, he's known as Monster Zero, who is not from here. He's not from the planet like Godzilla and all the other monsters, right?
Right.
But this description, if you actually run these measurements, it comes across as like a giant, a very large creature,
Yeah.
like half a mile tall, almost, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And so it says here, and he led them down in verse 12 from the Mount of Olives and looked wrathfully upon the angels that keep hell, which is Tartarus, and beckoned unto Michael to sound the trumpet in the height of heavens. And Michael sounded, and the earth shook, and Beliar came up, being held by 660 angels and bound with fiery chains. And the length of him was 1600 cubits, and his breadth 40. In the Latin, it's 1300, and it goes on. It says in the Latin too, it says his length was 1900 cubits and his breadth 700, which seems more balanced proportions.
Yeah.
One wing of him 80 cubits, and his face was like a shining. Was like a lightning of fire, and his eyes full of darkness. And out of his nostrils came a stinking smoke, and his mouth was as the gulf of a precipice, and the one of his wings was 80 cubits. So it's funny because when I think of this thing, it reminds me, like, if you saw like just like a Google the image of King Ghidorah from the movie, it's like this big old giant dragon that looks similar to that. They kind of have like him in an image where it kind of looks like more like he's what would be called Satan or something to that effect.
Right. Right.
And so it was just very interesting because we also see in the book of Revelations the dragon, that old serpent, the dragon known as Satan, is spoken about in the book of Revelations. And it's just weird that it gives this description. And so I've always thought this was very interesting. Um, you know,
Yeah. And like I said, I always going to, for better or worse, um, hang on the 5 books of Moses, or the 6 books of Moses, if you want to add the book of Jubilee, and the gospel, the 4 gospels, and they'll call it the epistles, in regards of learning logic and understanding and wisdom. But these other books doesn't mean you cannot find interesting conversation or interesting knowledge and wisdom in a greater perspective. I want to focus on the last part of the because there's a lot of read there, and I don't want to bore the people, but I want to start it at the last part, when Bartholomew said unto him, "Declare unto us, Lord, what sin is high, heavier than them all," right? So I want to focus on that, right? Because see, these are the things, like all the other stuff that we read. It's interesting, I'm not saying it's not. Matter of fact, let's start a little before. Let's start at. And Bartholomew said, "And wrote these things into my heart, took hold on the." Okay, so because now, and especially now, I want to read things that we could utilize today. Reading on the measurements of Satan or Mary, and fire coming out of her mouth, and Jesus, Christ, stopping her. And did it happen? I don't know, but it doesn't help me in any way today. It gives me wisdom, understanding. Maybe it could have happened, maybe not. I don't know. But it clearly it doesn't help me today how to operate as a Christian, right? So I always like to read these extra biblical scriptures in regards of when they were asking Christ about a divorce, fornication. What is this sin? What about this law? Because then it gives me more insight on the mind of Christ, or the mind of, that could have been the mind of Christ if this thing is legit, right? But I always lean back if there's a contradiction. I always lean back into the law and the prophets and the gospel, right? But these are things that are interesting to know. But I want to focus on now on, we could pick it up at verse 69, and then we could start there if you don't mind.
Verse 69. Verse 69. Then I, Bartholomew, which wrote these things in mine heart, took hold on the hand of, Glory be to thee, O Lord Jesus Christ, that givest unto all thy grace, which all we have perceived. Alleluia. Glory be to thee, O Lord, the life of sinners. Glory be to thee, O Lord, death put to shame. Glory be to thee, O Lord, the treasure of righteousness. For unto God do we sing.
Right, and let's pick it up at verse 70, I'm sorry.
And as Bartholomew thus spake again, Jesus put off his mantle and took a kerchief from the neck of Bartholomew and began to rejoice and say, Then Jesus took a kerchief, and said, I am good, mild and gracious and merciful, strong and righteous, wonderful and holy. I am good, alleluia. I am meek and gentle, alleluia. Glory be to thee, O Lord, for I give gifts unto all them that desire me, alleluia. Glory be to thee, O Lord, world without end, amen, alleluia. And when he had ceased, the apostles kissed him, and he gave them the peace of shalom, of love.
Now this question, this is the part that really, I think I began to say, okay, I could take something from this book. All the other stuff was interesting. Christ going to Hades, taking out Adam, the conversation that when Bartholomew had with Satan, and say, why you fell, and he said, well, because I didn't want to worship the image of God, Adam, your father, all that is interesting, it's good, but this, I think, hit home for me more than anything else. And I want to know, and I want to hear, and I want to, maybe the people, I want to maybe put the link online so people could maybe get a call in as well through SteamYard. This would hit home for me the most, right? Let's pick it up at chapter 6, I believe. Right, a V and a 1 is a 6, right? The V represents 5, 1 represents, the I represents 1. But thou will say unto him, declare unto us,
yes, sir,
Lord, what sin is heavier than all sins. And I was like, okay, this perked my ears. So let's read that if you don't mind, brother.
Gospel of Bartholomew, chapter 6, verse 1. Bartholomew saith unto him, declare unto us, Lord, what sin is heavier than all sins? Jesus saith unto him, verily I say unto thee, that hypocrisy and backbiting is heavier than all sins. For because of them the prophet said in the psalm, that the ungodly shall not rise in the judgment, neither sinners in the counsel of the righteous, neither the ungodly in the judgment of my Father. Verily, verily, I say unto you, that every sin shall be forgiven unto man, every man, but the sin against the Ruach HaKodesh shall not be forgiven.
And
Verse
this is
3.
Two things.
And Bartholomew saith unto him,
I want to ask you,
is...
I'm sorry, I know there's a delay, so I apologize. Quick question before we continue. because I want to also hear, because Bartholomew asked him, what is the sin against the Holy Spirit? And we want to touch on that. But I want to first touch on this. So Christ says that the most serious sin, and Jesus said unto them, verily I say unto you, that hypocrisy and backbiting is heavier than all sins. Would you agree to that? Because I gotta kind of agree, and this is the reason I want to give you my reasons. But what say you?
Yes.
What do you believe that there's some legitimacy here? Because this perked my ears when I read this.
Yes, I believe this is legitimate because what you see in the modern church here in the Western world, especially here in the United States, what have you, that I can use as an example, you have a mainstream mill of churches who they claim to be, they use the term, they follow Christianity, but yet they do not obey the book. They're literally walking hypocrites. They've taken on the doctrines of men, and they've become what's called the literally they're the modern day Pharisees.
Yeah,
And so when we come and tell them, hey, this is what the law of Christ says, this is what Christ is saying, they'll tell us that we're the ones being wrong. So they'll claim, here's an example of hypocrisy. They'll literally go, if you go up and ask a person that claims to be a Christian and ask them if they love Christ, they will say, yes, I love Christ. And then you tell them, hey, well, it says in John 14:15, if you love me, keep my commandments.
yeah,
That's the Sabbath day, feast days, all these things that pertain thereunto. Okay. So what you have happening, these hypocrites, they go out into the world and they claim to be following Christ, but their heart is far from him. They're actually doing the opposite of what the scriptures say. That, is the definition of sin.
yeah,
Hypocrisy within itself is the opposite of the obedience, because if you're obeying by default, you're not a hypocrite. So when you're doing the opposite of that,
yeah,
it kind of is like a catch-all.
yeah, yeah,
And we have to remember Christ was very good at giving answers and having that answer cover a multitude of things. And that is a catch-all, because anytime you're sinning and you're claiming to follow the truth, even though you may do it accidentally, we all stumble here and there,
yeah,
but we're stumbling into also a hypocritical state, or a state of hypocrisy, if that makes any sense. So
yeah,
yes, I do agree with what's stated here.
yeah. That did stick with me, and because I remember when Christ says, "Remember the hypocrisy of the Pharisees," right? And then, or beware of the leaven, and then it was broken down in the scripture that says that hypocrisy is the leaven of the Pharisees, and that's what Christ came to crush down, right? And it makes sense that hypocrisy will be the greatest sin, because look at it from God's perspective. If he looks down at someone who's been a hypocrite because he knows he's not there for the right reasons, he's not there, or she's not there for the right reasons, or he's not there sincere for the sincerity, and so forth, so on. Yeah, I could see how God would be like, that's the greatest sin that you could do, right? Outside of maybe perhaps worshiping another god, right? That's also considered as the a fornication, a spiritual adultery towards the Most High. But hypocrisy, acting like you do love God, but you don't really love God. That's, I would say, I could concur with that one. And the second one is backbiting. And I have to kind of agree with that too. Because backbiting, we could say, it could be spreading negative rumors, right? What's the definition of backbiting? Let's look it up. The definition of backbiting. The definition of backbiting. I know backbiting is mentioned in the scriptures.
Right. And also understanding that with backbiting, right? So when we look over into Leviticus, loving your neighbor as yourself, Leviticus 19:16, 17, and we don't want our neighbors to stumble. We don't want
Right.
our brothers and sisters to stumble. but we also, Christ in Matthew chapter 18, he tells us if we have an issue with our brother or sister, you know, to go to them, right?
Right.
Not talk behind their back, go. And I want to say Matthew 18, it says, let's see here, Matthew 18, verse 15, it says, moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother. But if he will not hear thee, then take with thee one or two more, that in the mouth of two or three witnesses every word may be established. And if he shall neglect to hear them, tell it unto the church.
Right.
But if he neglect to hear the church, let him be unto thee as a heathen man and a publican.
Yeah.
Right. So he says, hey, if you have an issue with him, first attempt to clear that up. But there's distinct warnings in the Torah. Even it says, like, if you see your your neighbor's donkey, heading into a ditch, and you don't like that person, you still don't let his donkey fall into a ditch.
Right.
Because we still together must live together as a people. Right.
Right.
So when you go into backbiting and saying negative things about someone when you didn't take the opportunity to clear that up, there's no need for backbiting. If you feel someone is in error or in sin, you want to first go to that person and help, save their soul, and hope that they would do the same for you.
Yeah.
What we see over in Ezekiel chapter 3, verses 16, 17, 18. So when you don't do that and you feel that person's in error, and you say, okay, well, I'm just going to go and talk about them to this person or this lady or that guy, you know what I'm saying? Versus, actually addressing the issue and helping that person out, so I can see, I agree with that as well, that
Yeah.
that is an issue, because we have to love our neighbor as ourselves.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sorry. Finish your thought. I want you to finish your thought. I apologize.
I'm sorry, you're delayed.
I know that we're having a delay, so we do apologize.
No, I was just going to say that we should. Yeah, I was just going to say that we should love our neighbors, as we love ourselves. So I wouldn't want someone talking behind my back when they could just come and ask me the question, and then we say, "Hey, let's open the books up. Let's see, can we search this thing out?
Yeah.
And I'll show you why I have this approach, and then
Yeah.
the other brother may show me why he has his approach." Versus just saying, "Okay, you know what? I'm not going to talk to this person at all," or maybe I'm in control of a platform and I say, "Okay, I'm going to boot this person." But then next week I'm gonna do a whole lesson talking about, the negativity of this person without allowing that person to speak.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to be treated like that. So therefore, we shouldn't treat our brothers and sisters like that.
Right. It says, I'm in Proverbs chapter 25, 23. The north wind drives away the rain. So does an angry countenance, a backbiting tongue. Right? So I think Christ was onto something. I gotta kind of agree with this particular statement, and I don't see any agenda with this particular conversation here, because I believe that it makes sense. I could all the other stuff about God going to, Christ going down to Hades, Mary and the fire and the mystery and all that. I could take that or leave it. That's it doesn't affect me. But this affects us, right? Hypocrisy and backbiting. And if Bartholomew did ask this question, and this is actually, we're reading history, we're reading an actual event, we should take this home to heart. If Christ didn't say, murder, he didn't say homosexuality, he didn't say bestiality, he didn't say theft, he didn't say sacrificing to other gods, right? He said that the greatest sin, the highest sin that you could commit is hypocrisy and backbiting. We should listen. We should pay attention, because it affects us, right? Whether Mary was a virgin or not, it doesn't affect us. But this affects us in every day. So let's continue reading, see if we could get some more data that we could. So let's pick it up. Let's see here. We're going to pick it up. at verse 3, the Holy Spirit, right? Because I think uh, that Bartholomew also asked him that question, and this also affects us. So let's see this. Pick it up at verse 3 of chapter 6.
All right. And continuing on, verse 3. And Bartholomew saith unto him, what is the sin against the Ruach HaKodesh? Yasha saith unto him, whosoever shall decree against any man that have served my body, my holy, I'm sorry, Salakia, start that one again. Jesus saith unto him, verse 4, Jesus saith unto him, whosoever shall decree against any man that have served my holy Father hath blasphemed against the Ruach HaKodesh. For every man that serveth Elohim worshipfully is worthy of the Ruach HaKodesh. And he that speaketh any evil against him shall not be forgiven. Woe unto him that sweareth by the head of Elohim. Yea, woe to him that sweareth falsely by him truly. For there are 12 heads of Elohim, the Most High. For he is the truth, and in him is no lie, neither forswearing. Yea, therefore go ye and preach unto all the world the word of truth, and thou, Bartholomew, preach this word unto everyone that desireth it. And as many as Bartholomew saith, O Lord, and if any sin with sin of the body, what is their reward? And Yasha said, it is good if he that is baptized present his baptism blameless, but the pleasure of the flesh will become a lover. For a single marriage belongeth to sobriety. For verily I say unto thee, he that sinneth after the third marriage or wife is unworthy of Elohim, is to this effect. But if the lust of the flesh come upon him, he ought to be the husband of one wife. The married, if they are good and pay tithes, will receive a hundredfold. A second marriage is lawful on condition of the diligent performance of good works and due payment of tithes. But a third marriage is reprobated, and virginity is best. But
So
ye preach you unto every. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I know there's delay. So what do you? This folks, before we continue, do you think that Christ said this? Do you think this is something that is we could take home? Is this is something that it is? Was he referring to an advice? Was he so having more than two wives is considered, or if you have three, you consider a reprobate. He says, but virginity is best. This is kind of similar to what Paul was saying in regards of like that I spare you if you get married. That if you get married, you're gonna worry about the things of the world, how you can please your spouse. But if you're a virgin, you could focus only on the Most High. How can you please Him? Do you think that there's any credence to this statement here?
Yes, it's just that the statement, because of how fragmented it is, and it also, you know, and this is like one of the, about the same that I usually see with this, translation of the Gospel of Bartholomew. So as you go through it piece by piece, some will go and they'll say, okay, well, hey, you can have two wives, but not three. But what it seems that he's saying here, when we start from the in verse 8, where he says, for a single marriage belongeth to sobriety, for verily I say unto thee, he that sinneth after the third wife is unworthy of Elohim. So it's speaking to some type of sin first and
Right,
foremost.
right.
It could be a situation where um, it could be a person because he's dealing with the lust of the flesh. But this translation reads a little bit different. This one says will be, um, but the pleasure of the flesh will become a lover, and this is not the best particular translation of this
Got you.
verse. But what happens is he's dealing with the lust of the flesh, as we've seen in the one that we had read together previously.
Yeah.
Um, and he goes on to say, so remember, in the Gospels, He talks about men putting away their wives, and the hardness of their heart
Yeah.
was that they weren't giving them a bill of divorcement, and thereby eventually these women would be burning and would by default cause them into a situation of adultery
Yeah.
because the divorce process had not been completed. So here we see if a man is in a situation where he's lusting and but it's causing him to sin against his wife or what have you. It goes on and says, "For verily I say unto thee, he that sinneth after the third wife, is unworthy of Elohim." Then says to this effect, then there's a portion missing. But if the lust of the flesh come upon him, meaning if he's struggling, okay, not just sexually, it says the lust of the flesh, that could be a multitude of sins. It says he ought to be the husband of one wife. The married, if they are good and pay tithe, will receive a hundredfold. A second marriage is lawful, which the word second could simply mean another marriage. Not only number two is lawful. All
Right.
right. So this is where the Greek gets very convoluted, or whatever translation. This could be Latin or something like that.
Yeah.
But when it says a second marriage is lawful, that means you can get married, have another wife,
Yeah.
which is lawful, which lines up with Torah. And it says on the condition of diligent performance of good works. That means you're not in sin, right? Because a lot of Christians, they hear this and they say, oh, you guys are talking about a works-based salvation. Well, works just simply means action, and upon performance of proper action, you can then have another wife.
Yeah.
Why? Because Christ didn't want the apostles, elders, and all these things of the church having men run around that were out there acting, crazy, or as we used to say way back in the day, acting a fool.
Yeah.
And then they're picking up sisters and they're not able to take care of their household, so on and so forth. That's why he says on diligent performance of good works and due payment of tithes. Now we know tithes usually, depending on who you're listening to, comes around 3 times a year
Yeah.
during the feast days, where we take that money we have set aside and ordain that for the feast. But it goes on and says, but a third marriage is reprobated, which is a reference to the middle of the verse, going back to if that person has messed up that third time,
Right.
not saying that you
Right.
can't be married 3 times. And he goes on, he says, and virginity is best, meaning that at this point, you know, you may want to, till you get your stuff together, stay to yourself, work on yourself,
Right.
as you refer to being on your Enoch, right?
Right, because I think when you go back and it says, "For verily I say unto thee, he that sins after the third wife or marriage is unworthy to see God." Meaning, if you got 3 wives and you're still running around fornicating, there's something wrong with you. And I think maybe that's what Christ was trying to tell Bartholomew, because when it says, "But the pleasure of the flesh will become a lover," and I think what we're going to do also, since you mentioned this other translation that reads a little different, that we should maybe bring all the translation, all that was translated
Mm-hmm.
in English, right? Because we're English-speaking audience, and see if it reads a little different. Because I will bet that what he really meant, that in modern terms, but the pleasure, but he that had the pleasure of the flesh will become like in modern term, like a player, like someone who's always with different women and always,
Mm-hmm.
getting caught up with, oh, it didn't work out here, she was too wicked, and there's a lot of Israelite brothers out there that are hiding behind the multiple wives law to pleasure the flesh.
Yep.
And I was guilty of that in my younger years, right? I used to first sleep with the sister, then bring out, I'm an Israelite and you're my wife now and all that. Try to trick her in, manipulate the situation. There's a lot of that
And
go on within the Israelite community, and so that needs to stop.
yeah, and you have to
Absolutely.
be careful nowadays because there's some sisters out there that may try the same thing. All right,
Yeah.
where they'll say, "Oh well, hey, because the desperation and the demand for actual real men is actually at an all-time high,
Yeah.
in this country. And even when we look into verse 9, he finishes up on the subject, implying it says, "But ye preach ye unto every man that they keep themselves from such things.
Right.
For I depart not from you, and I do supply you with the Ruach HaKodesh." But notice here in verse 9, he says, "Keep themselves from such things." This was a conversation. There were certain things going on.
Right.
And we see multiple witnesses of this same conversation take place over in the Gospels, where he's talking about where we see the example in Matthew, Mark. I want to
Yeah.
say it was Matthew, Mark, and I want to say Luke,
Yeah.
where he touches on, is it lawful to put away your wife, so on and so forth. And a lot of people will use that, like Geno Jennings had tried to use that to say, okay, hey, this is what this says. It can only be one husband, one wife, and
Yeah.
that's not what it says at all.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
it's
And sometimes I read this not as a law. I read this as a proverbs or wisdom scriptures, right? So I think what Christ was trying to address is someone who has suffered from sex addiction, for instance. That would be the modern term for it, right? You're addicted to sex, addicted to porn, this is, and then this society feeds that desire, right? And
Mhm.
they had prostitutes back then too, right? And I think what happened is that Christ was trying to tell a brother or the brothers, or Bartholomew, that um, if you're suffering from sex addiction, he started, after the third marriage, if he continues fornicating, right? At that time, who did you fornicate with? Other people's wife and prostitute. Prostitution was a common thing back then. It's a common thing in the Middle East, even with all this Islam and all that down low. Prostitute is the oldest profession, right? They say, right? So you always have women of the night, right? So he was probably, maybe the way I read it is like, if you, after three wives, if he continues in that sin, he's not worthy. So there's some control, and there's some responsibility on the individual to say, or to not allow himself to go too deep into this sin, because a lot of times, the way I read this, Christ was trying to tell them there's no coming back if you continue
right.
in that sin.
And
Yeah.
yes, sir. And when we look at to touch on what you said about him dealing with, the issue of, I believe you said sex addiction or what have you.
Right.
When we look at Matthew chapter 5, verse 32, this goes right in line with the same topic. It literally says, matter of fact, I'll read verse 31 and 32.
Let me go
It
there.
says, "It had been said, whosoever,"
Let me go there. What are you, Matthews? Matthews.
Matthew chapter 5,
31.
verse
Let's go there real quick. Let me just show the audience. Well, my fact, let's go here. Let's go here. And then let's go here. Did it switch? There you go. Let me bring it up a little bigger. So let's read it.
All right, so verse 31 and 32. Yeah, there we go. So it says, "It have been said, whosoever shall put away his wife, let him give her a writing of divorcement. But I say unto you that whosoever shall put away his wife, saving for the cause of fornication, causeth her to commit adultery." Here's the issue: she's put away, she's not divorced.
Right.
So he's addressing both issues in these two verses. Because put away and divorced are two totally different things.
Yeah.
So he's saying here, "But I say unto you, whosoever shall put," he says, "But I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, unless it's for the cause of fornication, cause of her to commit adultery," because they weren't giving them the bills of divorce. That was the hardness of their hearts. And that's why he says, "And for the hardness of your hearts, he wrote you this precept."
Right.
Okay. And he goes on, he says, "And whosoever shall marry her that is," and that the word divorce is not actually there in the Greek. It's actually put away. But you can hit the tools and probably pull it up too. It should be put away. It should be a different word.
Yeah, it is.
But
I could let me get it.
it says, and whosoever shall marry her that is divorced committeth adultery. That's where Brother Geno Jennings goes wrong, because he doesn't know that it doesn't really say that. The
Right.
translation that I use, the scriptures, which is the ISR, which I have right here, it literally has all, most of the Greek. I'll just show it to you real quick. Has most of the Greek,
Yeah.
have all that stuff corrected. But yeah, so I don't know, it might, even if you click on tools right there and
Uh,
click interlinear,
yeah. Let me
it might be able to
let,
show that.
let me go here. Let me go here. Let me go here. And which word you put away? Is that the word you're looking for?
Scroll down to verse 31.
31. And you
Yes,
want
sir.
the building put away?
We're going to look at this. I'm sorry, verse 32. Verse
32.
32. And we're going to go to see right there where it says G630. That word, right there, G630.
Adultery?
No, G630. The one
well, what's the word though?
right,
What's the word?
divorce.
Divorce.
Right.
Okay.
Her,
Divorce.
her that
Okay.
is
G1.
divorce.
Okay. Yeah. Right. The word there
Yeah. So
is to set free, to
right, but
to
right.
let go, dismiss, to obtain, no longer. Right.
No, go back up just a little bit. So right there it says the KJV translates Strong's G630 in the following manner: release, put away 14 times, send away 13 times, let go 13 times, set at liberty 2 times, let depart 2 times. So also what happens, a lot of translations get the verse wrong in the Old Testament where it says the Lord hateth putting away. A lot of newer translations will put the Lord hateth divorce, not understanding that put away and divorce are not the same thing. They are literally two different states. To be put away is what the world calls today legal separation.
Right.
But in our, obviously here in America, legal separation, they go and they do all types of debauchery. They feel they can sin, but technically they're still married and they're not supposed to. So that's what legal separation, that's what the world would call legal separation. That's the phrase put away, which is completely separate from the divorce process as defined in Deuteronomy chapter 24, verses 1 through 4, which is a clear outline process. It's literally a 4-verse process. You write the bill of divorce,
Yeah.
you put it in her hand, and you send her out her house. Then the process is complete.
Yeah,
What was
and we
happening?
may have to do a discussion about that, because I was having a discussion with a brother and about that the law there in Deuteronomy 24 was was referring to the uncleanness is if she commit adultery. I said, well, brother, there was already a law what to do with an individual who committed adultery. The adulterer and adulteress will be
That's death.
will be death. Will be put to death. So there will be no reason to do another law for the same law, or another penalty for the same trespass. So this was something else, and then that was the argument, and even reading it, right? If I was listening to Moses, I would have said, hey, Moses, could you give me more definition about what does it mean uncleanness, right? Because that's a broad statement, right? And I do believe that I do believe they did ask Moses that question, and I do believe that he answered that question, and I do believe that there was a oral tradition, but that oral tradition got defiled. Through the process of years, you tell one secret to one person, by the time it gets to the 10th person, it's a totally different story, and that happens. And I think Christ had to fix the tradition of the elders, because they were misguided in regard to this understanding. So anything else? So let's see what else let's read the commentary here. Let's see, it goes into and people could read this on their own and so forth so on. But this what that, and it goes into like, the different copies, the book, the Resurrection of Jesus Christ, by Bartholomew. They exist the Coptic version, and you can visit it in the British Museum, and it goes into different perspective in regards of the this writings. But I think it's a good read, but I will read it with some cautious. Understand what you're reading. Understand you're reading several different fragments. They are not complete. So that little part was not there. It could bring a different light, right? And a lot of books that were rejected. A lot of the reason was because they were incomplete. They were damaged. So sometimes there was not always a cynical reason, but it doesn't mean that you cannot take some wisdom from these books, right? So every Thursday we're gonna go and touch on different writings of different extra biblical writings. I'm still loving let me just go ahead. I'm still loving the 2 seconds. Let me just adjust this. Okay, let me do this. And I'm gonna put let me put the link. The link is below. If somebody wants to call in, you could just press the link, and then you can make a phone call, or you could come in and so forth. So on. Those that want to come in and want to ask some questions. But what book you want to attack next week, Brother Logic? I was thinking we could maybe, I don't know what books, or people could also comment below which books you guys want us to attack. That you feel it will bring some. You may have some questions about it. You may have, Logic has been studying these books a lot. I want to bring him on where he can. We could have these discussions about, can we gain any wisdom, any verification, and so forth, so on. So Logic, what book you think you want to attack next week?
Well, me personally, I like going into the Old Testament stuff, but the one from the New Testament that I really feel that, after going through it, I believe it's called, it's either the Gospel of Pilate or the Gospel of Nicodemus.
The Gospel of
Um,
Nicodemus, okay?
yeah, and it's long, but it clears up a lot of things, and you find a lot of second witnesses, especially in there pertaining to, um, Christ's trip, being the 3 days in the center of the earth, and testifying to the captives and setting them free, like you read here in
Okay,
the Gospel of Bartholomew. Also, what was spoken in the Gospel of Peter, where he says, did you speak to them that were captive? And it says, yay. Did you preach to them, the message of the cross? Yay. You see, like, because in the mouth of two or three witnesses, that's when it starts to become established. What you
yeah,
see happening is a lot of the books that are removed all have certain key narratives, and you see elements of those narratives in the regular gospels.
right,
But if you once you start putting these missing pieces together, I know in Ezra it says that there were going to be, about 92 books or something to that effect hidden,
yeah,
or maybe even more, like 214. I can't remember it. We see in other texts that books would be hidden, things like that. We also remember the one that you had spoke on last week, Peter's letter to James,
yeah.
talking about, keeping certain epistles away or what have you, and having the people wait like a certain amount of time,
6 years,
being pro- yeah, 6 years before they
yeah,
could get access to those things.
yeah.
So, I definitely think those things are important. And I believe someone in the chat has said tithing is was not money. That is correct. Tithing was not money. You would usually turn that into food,
Right,
but if you go into the Torah, you can also turn that into money. And then, especially like say if you got a long journey, and I'm coming to, say, for example, if I'm coming for Pentecost at, the I Am Fit house over there at Elder Gabar's place,
Yeah.
I can't put a cow on a plane. So you have to, that's why the scripture says you can turn it into money,
Right.
then take it, and once you get there, you can go and then buy the food.
Yeah. The money
But it still
changers.
comes back down
Yeah.
to food.
That's
Yeah,
why the money. That's
yeah,
why
exactly.
Christ flipped the table for the money changer. Because when people were traveling, they were changing their money, but they were manipulating the scales. The Jews were manipulating the scales. The Pharisees. So let's just say you had $500 worth of animals, wine, and an offering, right, for the feast, and you switch that to coins or what's that word? Uh, uh, what's that word they used to call it?
Like kasef,
Not
kasef.
shekels, right?
Okay,
And you put it in your bag, and then when you go to Jerusalem, you will repurchase the thing that you sold. So then now, so you're not dragging all the sacrifice and dragging all the offerings. You could rebuy it, but what they were used to do, they would manipulate. So if you bought your $500 worth of sacrifice, right? Then okay, what? Let me see. Make sure. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I'm. Are we still live? I want to make sure we still live.
Yeah. Yes, it says we're still alive.
Okay, okay. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, yep. Looks okay. We good. Okay, I just want to make sure if we are good. Okay, so in Jerusalem, they were manipulating the scale, so then you will go and say, "Oh, there's only $300 worth of good. We could pay you $300, so you have to dish out another $200." So they were manipulating and so forth, so on. Yeah. I cannot hear you. Okay, you're
No, I
back.
was going to say, now it appears that we may not be live now. Let me check.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems like it's offline. Let me go back and check here.
All right, because
It seems like it's off. Go back in. There we go.
Let's see what happened here. What's going on here?
Yeah, because I have it just where it's just you frozen at. Go back here a little
Yeah,
bit.
I rebooted my stuff and it looks like I'm back on. But
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right.
yeah,
Sorry about that.
yeah, this thing's actually acting weird later. I gotta figure out what I want to do. So on. I probably gotta change
Yeah,
the
so it's on.
put the modem back to the somewhere close to the window or something. I gotta get an expert here. What I need, man. What was that, brother? From when I was GOCC, brother Anthony. This brother was like a genius with technology. I need another of that, another one of that. So for so on, but so absolutely. So the book. What's the book you want to attack next week?
Oh wow.
You
Let me
mentioned
think
the
of a good one.
gospel. You mentioned one. You mentioned one. That was excited.
Well, the gospel of Nicodemus
So
is
let's
really,
attack.
really dense,
So let's go
and
to
that
that
would
one.
be like a multiple week process. I mean, you can read it in one day or one night. It's only, and there's also audio available to it, but it's a lot of good stuff in there.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
So the
So
gospel of Nicodemus, that we're gonna attack that next week. So that will be every Thursday. We're gonna attack a different book. We're gonna, we urge everybody just to read it on their own. So then when we're coming up, you're not reading it for the first time. And also read the commentary, right? When it was discovered, who discovered it, how many translations out there. We're gonna bring the different translations as well to make sure if we read something that it's questionable, we could read the other. Let's see what the other translations say. Maybe it could share a greater light, and we just have fun with it. It's not salvation driven. We really have the foundation. Christ is the Messiah. The commandments are not done away with, but we're under grace. So commandments that we cannot follow because of circumstances, God will give us an opportunity to get it right, right? We already have the fundamental understanding. This is more just for fun learning and to not get intimidated by these extra biblical scenario, because I think sometimes people that will read these extra biblical, will start following or start saying, look, this is the true gospel. We got to throw away the Bible. We got to follow these extra canonical books. And I don't think that's the right way to go and so forth, so on, because some books were legitimate fraud, and some books were questionable, and some books were tampered with, because every area, I would say, church wanted to be the main church. We got the true gospel. No, we got the true gospel, and they were debating. So if they come up with a gospel that kind of, agrees with them, they're gonna cherish that, and they're gonna get rid of a gospel who doesn't. Like, for instance, I want to give you like the Gospel of Bartholomew. I will say that the Roman Catholics probably will throw that one away, because they were teaching you can only have one wife, and that would probably challenge their doctrine, right? Because it favored the virgin birth, or again, it doesn't necessarily say it, but it does favor that narrative. It could even favor, women preachers, right? We could say, see, now because of Mary and she prayed, why can't I pray? She was, so it favors, modern theology or Western European theology, which was mostly Rome. Well, they didn't agree with women, and at least they're still holding on to that. A woman cannot be a pope, but who knows? That may change in the future. And I'm not against women. I love women, but according to the Bible, God has ordained men to be the teachers and the preachers and the people in the forefront, and women were created to be a helpmate to that, not leading that particular office, so to speak. So next Thursday we're going to be coming on again, but we're also going to be having a discussion. You and I had a discussion yesterday. We have some brothers, that were formerly with GOCC. They left because of doctrinal differences. They have a calendar that is similar to the Enoch, but they start on Wednesday, and they're going to be coming on after they're celebrating their Passover this Wednesday, and they actually invited me. I might go by there. It's going to be in Philly. Say hello to the brothers, but I'm going to try to get off work early, but there's no promise, but I want to try to see if I can make it. And just say hello, and then they're going to come on and bring their PowerPoint, and then there's going to be, I don't want to call it a debate, but a discussion from your point of view, their point of view, and then the audience could perhaps, the audience can make up their own mind. They could call in if they have any questions or comment on the comic board, so forth, so on. I see here the GOCC calendar is off by 1 day. Well, I would say more than 1 day. From my perspective, if they continue in this path, they're going to be off season within 15, 20 years. This year or next year will be the last year, and they keep continuing that cycle. New Year's will be in February 2 years from now, February 28th. And
Right.
it is going to keep waving and moving towards February, and then moving toward January. Before you know it, it's if they want to keep that calendar, no changes, yada yada. I'm not gonna judge that, but I believe there should be some adjustment. And like I said, your calculation and my calculation, although we approach it from a different perspective. I approach it that we should add a week on the 7th year. You approach it for that, which I understand and I do agree is a more accurate one to stay closer to the equinox every 6 years. But what I noticed, even the lunar and the Enoch calendar, there has to be some adjustment every few years to not. You have to be close to the vernal equinox as much as possible. And I believe that the Enoch calendar is the best formula to stay with that, minus some leap year, which could happen on the 6th or the 7th, depending on how you want to do it. And so for someone, you mentioned sometimes certain year could be the 5th year. And all of it, I think, a good idea. These are very scary territory that we are touching on because people are so, you know, adamant about their calendar, their doctrine, their
Yeah.
elder. And I would want this show to be a place of discussion without that pressure. But you were about to say.
Yeah, and I understand that people they get kind of nervous, and what happens is a lot of times, like I said it once, I said it, a dozen times in Ecclesiasticus. I wanted to say like around chapter 4, verse 22, but I'm not sure. It says, "Let not the reverence of any man cause thee to stumble."
Yeah,
Right. So it's important that we study to show ourselves approved, understanding that I understand these things may be scary for some people, but it's it's very easy once you like it's so easy that it's just because people have learned and been operating under the 365 calendar for so long, um not understanding that, hey, in the book of Enoch our years are 364 days,
yeah,
right? And only thing people have to do is look for the that point in time where even parts night, even parts day falls on a Shabbat. That's the reset. It's as simple as that.
yeah.
Everything outside of that, all the additional things that I explained, those are to explain to people who have been messed up, indoctrinated, and into all types of crazy things that they won't believe you unless you give them an answer. But here's the problem. It gets to a point to where they won't believe you unless you there's a difference between giving an answer and doing the work for the people, like doing all the legwork for them. Okay,
Yeah,
so for example, anyone keeping Wednesday, I would like for them to show, for example, like how the even parts night, even parts day happened on Wednesday this year. And being that I literally live here at the 5 minutes from the beach, and I went down there on the last day of the year and the first day of the year and recorded like that, it literally matched up, you know. So
yeah,
I would want to see the same effort and evidence. And then of course, those key questions, how do apples and oranges and bananas exist outside of time, being that they were created on the third day.
yeah.
And also understanding that uh, you know the Torah tells us the beginning was the first day. And even if we go with Wednesday being that, that would then mean that the first year would either be short 3 days or longer 4 days,
Right,
based on that.
right.
And so though all those complex questions would have to be answered. um what I'm saying, and I'm willing to, like I said, I'm willing to listen to it once or what have you, but I've been down this road, several times, and when those people typically realize that they can't answer something, they just don't answer it. And
Right,
so everything that like with that presentation, I'm willing, I can pull it up like literally right now and say, okay, anybody can put any random day. I don't care if it's in, the middle of October. I can show you what time sunset is going to be. Okay. From 4 different instruments,
right,
and this came from me having to seek these things out, for myself, because what happens is once the elders of different organizations, whether it be, this organization following the moon or another organization following Wednesday or another organization following Sunday, once they started having, different varieties of things, but yet none of them would come into the same room together and discuss this amongst themselves,
yeah,
and they just throw it back out on the sheep. Well, this sheep, I took it up on myself to say, well, hey, somebody's right, somebody's wrong.
right.
All right.
And that's the
And
reason why,
so,
yeah, that's the reason why I always believe that these type of conversations and these decisions when you're running a church should be decided by a council of men that challenge each other and look for blind spots before we bring our doctrine and things of that nature. And I think that's probably the best way. But I wanna end the show with reading the book of Enoch, if you don't mind,
all right.
chapter 80, because I think the book of Enoch in chapter 80 always stuck with me because I think from the chapter 72 or 70 all the way down to chapter 70 now, is the angel Uriel showing Enoch the cycle of the sun, the cycle of the moon, the cycle of the earth, and what, chamber goes in and out, and he was breaking everything down. But then he gave Enoch a warning and a prophecy that I think we could see that today. So if you don't mind, brother, we could read chapter 80 in the book of Enoch. I put it up for the people to see it. And I know you're getting up your book, and when you let me know when you're ready, because even the angel Uriel warned Enoch that everything is going to get out of whack at the end. And maybe this is the reason why we're having these arguments and these debates about the calendar. So let's pick it up at chapter 80, verse 1.
All right. And also we see a warning about that in Jubilees too, as a second witness also.
Exactly.
All right. So this is the book of Enoch, chapter 80. 1 second here. Let me do it like this so you can hear me. All right. So this is the book of Enoch, chapter 80, starting at verse 1. And in those days, the angel Uriel answered me and said to me, Knock, behold, I have shown thee everything, and I have revealed everything to thee, that thou shouldest see this sun and this moon, and the leaders of the stars of the heaven, and all those who turn them their task and times and departures. And in the days of the sinners, the years shall be shortened, and their seed shall be late in their lands and in their fields, and all things on the earth shall alter and shall not appear in their time.
You see that?
And the rain.
So I think there's something connected with that. If we're all out of whack and the cycle is not, it says, and all things on the earth shall alter and shall not appear in their time.
Mm-hmm.
And the rain shall be kept back, and the heaven shall withdraw it, and in those times the fruit of the earth shall be backward, and shall not grow in their time, and the fruit of the tree shall be withdrawn in their time, and the moon shall alter her order. That's why you can't follow the moon.
That's
like
right.
A female. She gets in the moon and swings, you can't even, and that you could actually prove that watching and observing nature, right? Pick it up at verse 4, brother, if you don't mind.
And all right, so 1 second here. Sorry about that. All right, it says, and the moon shall alter her order and not appear at her time. And I'll turn the page here. And in those days, the sun shall be seen in the heavens, and he shall journey in the evening on the extremity of the great chariot in the west, and shall shine more brightly than the order of luminaries. And many chiefs of the stars shall transgress their statutes, and these shall alter their orbits and tasks, and not appear at the seasons appointed to them. And the whole order of the stars shall be concealed from the sinners, and the thoughts of the inhabitants of the earth shall err concerning them, and they shall turn from all their ways. They shall err and consider them to be Elohim, and evil shall be multiplied upon them, and judgment shall come upon them to destroy all.
Exactly. So I just love that scripture, and that scripture stuck with me throughout years when I read it. It's like, okay, maybe this is the issue why, everything's a little bit out of whack. So we have to humble ourselves, because it could be an adjustment. Maybe it's like, when the earth tectonic plate shifts, and, maybe now that day in a quarter of the 365.5 or 25, whatever, needs to be adjusted to the 164 calendar of God. Maybe the planet is all out of whack because of the sinners. We have to humble ourselves. And maybe God made it this way to say, who are the men that are going to be the meek? Who are the men that are not going to make gods out of doctrine, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I tell people never fall in love with a doctor because you may have to change in the future. You may come across new information. Accept it for what it is until the Most High reveals a new information and then move on. Don't fall in love with a doctrine. No, it got to be this. It got to be that. I don't know, man. You don't say. I'm just trying to. I'm trying to master. The English language. I'm trying to master just this book right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just coming humble and having the discussion that we're going to be having in a few weeks about the calendar is not to bring debate. Is not going to be a scenario that it should divide. The brothers are having their Passover on Wednesday. If I can, I'll make it. I know my wife and child, they went to the Passover GOTC. They had a great time. Great for them. We're gonna keep our official ones in March 30th as the way we see it. But hey, man, we have to get away from like toxic language. Hey, brother, you going off? That's an off day. And we may be doing a lot of mistakes in regard to these feast days because the Roman Empire took our records from us. We're just picking up the pieces now. So you just have a little mercy on everybody. You just have a little patience. Yeah. Have a patience with yourself and have patience with with everybody else. So I hope you guys enjoy. This is going to be our entry level discussion about this, extra biblical writings, so you could have a understanding on these extra writings and why they exist and why they don't exist and why they were taken out. And like I said, not all writings were taken out for bad reasons. Some of them were damaged, incomplete, right? And they had to kind of add these extra. They kind of just say, hey, it's an unfinished book, so we have to just, not include it. I think it was a mistake. I think we should have include everything, but just categorize them. Just, put them in categories of this is something that Christ could have been said or could have said. Or we find 2 or 3 witnesses of the same thing. We could take that as like, okay, something that is reliable that Christ said and so forth, so on, right? But I do believe that the Roman Empire was, when they converted, they had an agenda. I believe everybody had the agenda. I believe, because the Egyptian churches in Alexandria and in those areas in Africa, they had an agenda to preserve what they believe. The Syriac church, they had an agenda to preserve what they believe. And everybody followed things a little different because there were very little documents, and the documents survived. Didn't tell much in regards of every scenario, so we had to kind of fill in the blanks and so forth, so on. So hopefully we'll be back next Tuesday, but next Thursday we're going to be dealing with the Gospel of Nicodemus. Gospel of Nicodemus. So, brother, any last words before we end the show?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, it's good for people to, start studying, start reading these, some of these extra biblical texts. I tend to focus more so on the ones that are, what would be considered Old Testament, like the, apocalypse of Elijah,
Yeah.
Testament of Job, so on and so forth. But, all these things, what I'm saying, can have hidden information that can open up your understanding, whether it be for timelines or doctrine or why certain things are the way they are or why certain things were said. There's a lot of, especially when you go into the Greek in the New Testament, there's a lot of things that sometimes, can be a little bit fuzzy or unclear. Not that the scriptures are unclear or that what's written in the second writings, the New Testament, is unclear, but just because, how the manuscripts are translated. Like we had mentioned, about the, Feast of Unleavened Bread being a week, and then showing that Yehoshua was eating bread with the disciples. And when we looked up the word, that that wasn't, in English, it still translates as bread, the
Yeah.
word bread, but it was actually leavened bread versus unleavened bread, things like that.
Yeah.
So that's the frustration with the Greek. In my opinion, is a very, the Greek is a very, corrupt language, so to speak. I
Yeah.
prefer, like the, the directness of or the almost one for one translation in the, in the Tanakh, the Hebrew, because it's, a lot clearer. Is when you get to the Greek, you have different manuscripts, so on and so forth. And, like I said, here I have to have, the ISR Bible, to get, a little bit more out of the Greek text, or, in the New Testament, so on and so forth, to help, clear up some of those things as I'm reading through.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
hopefully,
Sir Antonio Love had a great question. He says, how does one become a guest? I guess in the show, send us an email. We also got the link. If you
click
want to
the
come,
link.
yeah, click the link. You can come in. We could see you here. Then we could definitely make it happen. Absolutely, absolutely. Let's see here. It says 2021 chapter terms. Okay, I don't understand what that means exactly, but okay. So absolutely, if you guys want to come, anybody wants to come on, you're more than welcome. I mean, we're about to end the show, but you guys get the drift. Every Thursday, we're gonna have a conversation. Brother Antonio, just send me a link or email on the link below. IAMFITPodcast at gmail.com or M.G.G.W 144 at gmail.com. Yeah, brother.
Real quick, I just wanted to answer the brother Yasharala's question. It said, ID, it's equal days, equal nights, same time, sunrise and sundown, the same time. It was March 13th of this month and year. That was the new year. That would be impossible, because we can actually pull up the sunset and sunrise of March
Okay, let me.
13th.
This is brother Yashala. Okay, I see the code. It says it would be equal day, equal night, sometime sunrise and sundown. The same time, it was March 13 of this month, year. Okay, I would love, brother Yashala, for you to come in. Maybe not tonight, but in the future, and bring how you came to that estimation. That's always very important. How you came to that information, because that will bring light and why I see it different. I see it on March 17 this year, but I would like to know how you came to your conclusion. Also, brother Greg West, where's the link? Is below in the comment section. It's right in the comment
You,
section.
you can also post. You could also post it like in a little chat, Elder Gabar, where the people are talking. You can clip it and paste it in there so they can click on it.
Okay, let me see if I think I think I have it here. Yep. That's the link right there on the comment. So you guys can click on that if you guys want to come in. If you have any questions, you'll be more than welcome to come in. I think this StreamYard will allow I think 10 people at a time to come in. So we got more than enough space. So that's the link right there. We'll wait for a few seconds or minutes to see if somebody will come. If not, we're going to end the show. But what's important to understand is, and this is what I want our brothers, sisters, but especially brothers, we have to learn how to articulate our. Okay, we got brother West. Let me bring brother West right here. Shalom, brother West. How we doing, sir?
Shalom, Brother
Shalom.
Gabar, and the other gentleman. I don't know your name, but but thank
Shalom.
you for this lesson, yeah. And yeah, I just want to say, this was a eye opener. I didn't understand about certain teachings when it comes to the multiple wives or putting away. I didn't know that putting away and divorce were two separate things. I've never thought that, because I watched Geno Jennings, and his breakdown of the whole situation. But yeah, so that was a good enlightenment. I never knew that. But
Yeah.
yes, and Elder Gabar, I remember back in, what was it, 2009, I came to your house. You were very hospitable, very welcomed us in. You know, I was with my wife at the time. She was pregnant. We came to visit. Your wife and your daughter was very hospitable. Oh, sorry, very hospitable. And
And that's what
I remember.
in Philly, I believe.
No, it was in New York.
New York. Okay. Okay.
It was in New York, and I remember talking to you, and I said I had gave my concerns about as far as the doctrines that I didn't agree with GOCC, and ones I pointed out was the name, that Yahweh was evil, and that Yeshua was the name of Jesus Christ, and those two about the names. But the one I had the most issue was that the Holy Spirit was a female, and you told me that that's not a deal breaker. And when you said that, I was like, you know what, Elder Gabar, he's not gonna be there long. He's too real for he's too real for this organization or whatever, this church. When you told me that, I was like, that was a very good gesture to me. You know what I mean? That was a more of a characteristic gesture that was divided me from a spiritual or religious standpoint,
Yeah.
even though I disagreed with their doctrine. And I thought that was dangerously close to being on the unpardonable sin part. And I was like, that's one of the most dangerous doctrine I've ever heard. But when I said that to you, you was like, that was not a deal breaker. And I was like, you know what? He's the realest. That was me who made the comment about tithing is not money, because there was a lot of fault. See, I love the fact that finding out who we are, but there are a lot of there's a lot of false doctrines that exist within the Hebrew Israelite camps.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And those in particular in GOCC, I didn't. Those two, well, it was many more, but that was just part of the ones that I brought up to you.
See, this is the reason why, and I appreciate you calling and sharing your testimony. I think I don't know if you probably need to mute your. Are you listening to me through your phone?
So let me mute it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm listening through the phone, but let me mute my mic.
Okay. So. See, I could testify on both sides. I was a member of a church that I listened to leaders when I was in One West, and I was a leader when I was in GOCC. So I could see both sides of the equation. I could see the frustration of a member of a church saying, "Hey, I'm looking into something. This members, we always feel restricted. Elders, don't let the elders, and this go even back One West. I remember when me and my brother Tazawar, myself, we started looking into the book of Enoch and talking about it. And we went to the elders like, no, brother, that's off, brother. Don't talk. It's always shut down. So I could relate to you and brothers like you that felt restricted, right? But I could also relate to the other side, being an elder myself, that as an elder, when you're running a church, you're trying to protect the flock from heresy and confusion, and everybody's looking for you for a decision, or elder, what the Bible says about this? What the Bible says about that? And then you got to give them an absolute reason. And to be honest with you, not everything is clear in the Bible, and sometimes there's a fear as an elder to say that to your congregation. I don't know. This is what I think it is. What do you think it is? And now I could have that conversation because people call me elder because it becomes like, part of the thing. But I'm a brother before I was an elder, and I'm a brother now. I would be a brother, So if we could just talk like men with no pressure of like, hey, brother, why are you bringing this doctrine into the church? And remove that, we could get a lot more done because we could explore the space on the doctrine rather than, we're going to tell you what it is. And I'm not knocking that situation because you could even find biblical scriptures that talks about, double honor to the elders, don't bring, damnable heresy, different teachings, false teaching. And even Peter, in his lifetime, he was telling James, when we read the letters to James by Peter last week, hey, be careful. Don't give these documents to everybody because they're changing my meaning and yada, yada, yada. So I could understand both sides. If we could create a balance somewhere that brothers could talk freely, right? And I'm referring to churches and things of that nature. But don't be threatened by questioning or even disagreeing with the elder, right? And we could find that balance. But I could understand the elder side because, there's been people, has disagreed immensely. Like, I want to give you a story. There was a situation, one of the churches I used to, oversee, that the deacons allow a brother to stand up for almost like 20 minutes, just, debate the name, debate this, every doctrine. And what I told, well, brother, what you should have done with that, brother, is say, let's have the conversation after the class, right? And we could deal with your grievances, and at the end of it, right, we could decide whether you're going to continue with this church or not. So I do believe, and the problem is, I think, that as an elder, and I almost would love for every man to experience the concept of an eldership and running a church. It's a very frustrated one. It's a very taxing on your mental health and your mental capacity. People are constantly calling you, so forth, so on. And I didn't agree with everything that Elder Ricard stated, in regards of doctrine speaking. And I expressed it to him secretly and privately, and we went back and forth and so forth, so on. But, church is a tricky game. It's a tricky institution, and that's why I wanted to kind of get out of it. And I started this show and I started this podcast for the people could have the conversation, we could freely talk. I'm no longer under a church. You're no longer under a church. Or you may be under a church, but we could have these conversations. And if the pastor's okay for you to call in, fine, great, and things of that nature. We have to be free to talk and engage because we're in the valley of the dry bones. We're just waking up. We're just waking up and trying to figure who we are. So we're going to have a lot of questions. But go ahead. I'll let you say the last word.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I definitely agree with that. I also agree with your solution to having a committee to where the power is not centralized under one individual.
Yeah.
Because you can present different aspects, or you could discuss what other people are saying that they having a disagreement with as far as doctrinal wise.
Yeah.
They are able to reason together and pull information proven otherwise, and not having someone that's so should I say stuck in their ways or hard-headed or unrelenting in their stance due to it being ingrained in them from prior organizational background affiliation. It could be better. So I think absolutely a committee would be much better to where y'all can all reason together, and whatever that's crooked, we straighten it out.
Right.
And it's not centralized into one individual. You know what I'm saying? And
because we all bias. We all bias to some degree. Our upbringing, our culture, our race, our nationality, our gender, and there's only two gender, folks. Thus, we develop some biasness in our life and our experiences that may affect in our decision and making a decision. And then you have a church that's 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, and everything is based on one individual. It's just not healthy for that individual either. And so I hope more pastors implement that in every church. Have a system of 12, of 7. I like 12 because the 12 apostles represents that, and have a constitution, right? Because if you're in that position, that those 12 men will go into a room. Okay, let's look at all the research, look at all the data before we go and decree something. Those men should live a holy life, a righteous life. I will even pay for that. I believe the tithe and offering should go into an institution that these men, all they're doing is studying the word, right? All they're doing, I'm open for that as well. I mean, that goes back to the Levitical priesthood. I don't see any reason why the Melchizedek priesthood should not be the same, that we are spending money to support these men. For them, they don't have to worry about working for the man. They could just focus on the word, focus on reading, studying, learning Greek, learning Hebrew, learning history, because then we will get a better quality leaders if we feed that institution. And not only have that, but also have backup behind them if one of them falls, right? If one of them falls, they could be replaced. So it's like the position becomes important, not the person. I think that's something that's missing in all churches today. They will become better churches if they start implementing that institution. And I appreciate that you agree with me, because I think is what's missing in the churches today. And I think that's what Christ was trying to tell his disciples when they asked that question: who will be greatest among us? And he said, none of you guys. Who is greater, serve the one who's the least. But it's saying equality. And when you look at the pattern of evidence after Christ, every decision they were making through what? A vote. Right? If 2 or more are in my name, I'm in the midst of thee. Right? It has to be, it cannot be just one person. I mean, if the term bishop or apostles is the highest office, and there was 12, how can then you appoint yourself as one leader of your church? That you appointing yourself as Christ. I believe those 12 thrones are here on earth, the apostles. And I believe there should be an institution that not only it would replace one if they break the Constitution, they get caught up with adultery, stealing money, fornication, classic homosexuality, all the drama that happens in these churches, that we could say, you know what, we got another brother and so forth. So, or when the brother is passing away, he could say, you know what, I want to give my apostleship to this brother. He's been doing the work. So it will be a cycle that will check itself. Because who would check Pastor Dow? Who would check Elder Ricard? Who would check GMS leaders? Who would check Nathaniel? Who, right, from Israel United Christ? Who, if they go off, right, the whole church, and I have seen this a lot, when you have one pastor gets caught up with some drama with another woman, stealing money, an alcoholic, the whole church trembled because he was the only pastor. And what happened is everybody else, all the other minions will try to grab some power, and usually split happen. So you cannot rely on all that power on one man. It's illogical. I'm glad that you agree and concur, and maybe this will echo throughout the church world, and understand that the Pope got it wrong. The Catholic Church got it wrong. This whole, Pope, call no man father. That's what that word means, Pope, Papa. And, so that concept of a Pope, I think pastors are adopting that same spirit. But when you look at early Christendom, there was always a council. There was always a meeting to doctrine, church policy, issue that occurred. There always was a council. There was never one guy making no decision. It's illogical to do so, brother. So any last words before we end the show? And I appreciate you guys having discussing that, because that's important. Any last words?
Yes, I just want to thank you, brothers, for making it having the availability so where you can discuss open and have an open conversation. And I definitely agree with you. I want to thank you even from in times past when you open your door up to us and and was very hospitable and allowed me to make that statement, man, and didn't judge me and all of that, man. I just appreciate what you're doing now. Even though I first saw that, I was like, man, he's not going to stay there long. You know what I mean? But I just appreciate what you guys are doing now. And we're going into different levels of information. I'm learning a lot as far as the other books outside of the regular canonized Bible. So yeah, I'll be watching it. Thank you very much, Brother Gabar.
Thank you,
And
brother. I
yep.
appreciate you. I appreciate. Thank you, brother, for sharing your testimony. I know sometimes it's hard to have these conversations with brothers and listen. I got love for Ricard. There's no shot at him. There's just no in any way hold on. I'm trying not to kick. Okay, there we go. Okay, I got it right. Okay, I hope I got it right. Okay, thank you, brother, for the testimony. But this is a conversation, man. This is not. I don't want this to become the GOCC bashing studio or bashing show. It is not about that. This is about you sharing information. I feel so liberated to have these conversations without no judgment anyway. So, what I love church. I thank you for God establishing the concept of a church. But for me, the way it's run today, I think it's depressing. It's stopping growth, and it's just not healthy for the mind. I think to have a discussion is extremely healthy without any judgment, even when we disagree. I'm pretty sure you and I maybe disagree certain things in biblical. I see things a little different. You see things a little different, but we can move on and discuss it from a perspective of love and respect without all this backbiting that happens within the body. And listen, I sympathize with both sides, because you have people sometimes they creep in churches and they have agendas and they'll come in and they want to use the number and make merchandise of people. So I understand that there should be a flock and the shepherd should protect the flock, and I get that. But we have to just tweak our information a little better. Just tweak information a little better. So thank you everybody for allowing us to get into your living room for a few hours. I hope you guys learned something today. I'll hopefully be back next Tuesday. Enjoy your week. Enjoy your Sabbath. May the Most High keep you and bless you. And shalom.
Shalom.